Hello and welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Rosie Murphy.
And I'm Sammy Roth, and this is the podcast where we talk about Lost.
We are in Season 3. We've reached Episode 18, D.O.C.
This is the one where we find out some new things about Jin and Sun's history and how Jin's parentage and how Jin started working for Mr. Paik.
We find out that Sun's baby was conceived on the island, which means, as far as we know, she is going to die. We also witness the triumphant return, such as it is, of Mikhail Bakunin, and a great cliffhanger from Naomi.
And we have the last part of our interview with the actor Andrew Divoff, who plays Mikhail. So that's he's a fun guy, and we'll wrap that up.
Let's go.
As always on The Hatch, we start with our hot takes about the week's episode, and this week we have a hot take from a listener, which we're going to play.
Hi, Sammy and Rosie. This is Derek from Phoenix, Arizona. I am a huge fan of Lost, and I'm a huge fan of your podcast. This episode, excluding season finales, has my favorite cliffhanger ever in the show. When Naomi is finally speaking English, and she's talking to Hurley, and Hurley's like, we're survivors from Oceanic 15, and she says, no, that the plane was found, there were no survivors, and it just zooms in on Hurley's face, and he goes, what? I still watch that episode, and I get chills every single time. I think the reason why that cliffhanger is my favorite is, I put myself in Hurley's shoes and, like, the survivor shoes, and I would just be absolutely panicking and being like, wait a second, like, hold on, how is this happening? Like, how has our plane been found? But for some reason, I never thought that meant they were dead the whole time. I remember after that episode aired, I went online to forums and, like, people were saying, oh my god, they've been dead the whole time. This is purgatory or something. And I never thought that. I thought there was something else going on. I didn't really have a theory, but I just felt in my gut. I was like, no, they're not dead the whole time. That would be a cop-out. I don't believe that's what's happening. But I still, every time I watch that episode, I get chills at the end.
Man, I've got to agree with Derek about how good this cliffhanger is. Oh, man. When Naomi just says, you know, it comes out of nowhere, seemingly. You know, she has this picture of Desmond. She is clearly somehow involved with Desmond and Penny. And all of a sudden she knows what Oceanic 15 is. And then you get, you know, there were no survivors. And it's, oh man, it's incredible. And I don't remember where I was at the first time I watched Lost. Whether or not I had been going down the mental path of this is purgatory or something. But I think this did flip that switch for me.
The this is purgatory switch.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I see that. I also think that, I mean, to me, one of the things that's incredible about the Naomi plot is that this is the first time we get any word or any sense whatsoever about life continuing outside the island. Like, except for the scene with, Penny at the end of season 2 where we briefly flashed off island, like, this is the first time here within the island storyline that we have any indication of how things have continued to go in the real world. So while I see the purgatory flip switching, I also feel like this scene in some ways serves the opposite purpose of okay, there is still a real world out there that is continuing, that, is thinking about what happened to Oceanic 815. So it could kind of cut both ways.
Mm-hmm. Right, but in the real world, they have this answer, apparently. And they found the plane and there were no survivors, which I guess, without knowing what we know now, you could either take to mean there were sort of no bodies at all, or, we find out later that there were bodies aboard, although, of course, not real ones.
Yes. No, I agree. It's a fabulous, fabulous twist.
Absolutely.
Anyway, Derek, thank you for the call. If anyone else wants to leave their own hot take and have us play it on The Hatch, you probably know how to do that by now. We have a phone number. It is +1 9546 Dharma. Again, that's 9546 Dharma. give us a call. We'd love to hear from you.
You can also record a voice memo and just message it to our Facebook page if you prefer that option, facebook.com/thehatchpodcast.
Rosie, what's your hot take?
Just that this episode contains, honestly, one of my all-time favorite lines, which is when Mikhail Bakunin says,
"That's a flare gun.
And how do you think you'll feel? Taking a flare to the chest at this range?"
As your friend pointed out, I already died once this week.
He's just kind of making subtext text in the listener or the viewer's feeling of like, wait a second, I thought we dispensed with this guy, and of course we have not, because he needs to come and serve as this Deus Ex Machina, and I felt like the writers were just having a little bit of fun with us there.
I agree with that. I think that almost everything they do with Mikhail at this point, they've realized what Andrew Divoff's talents are. They're just going to have as much fun with him as possible.
Oh, yeah, and he delivers it so well. That's
sure.
all. What's your hot take?
The scene where Sun asks Juliet, what is this place, when she shows her the back rooms that are hidden in the Arrow station. And Juliet very chillingly says,
"It's where we brought the women to die."
I mean, one, it's super chilling, but two, I'm thinking like, Jesus Christ, how cruel is that they, these women who are going through, they're pregnant and they're hoping to give birth and they realize they're dying. They don't let them die with dignity at home among their people, friends, family. I don't know. They bring them to this creepy location outside of their community on the other side of the island and like lock them in a hidden back room to die. Like, oh my God, what is up with that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does seem really cruel, especially because how many people does Juliet say she's lost? Is it 7 or 9? 9 in the last 3 years. I mean, this is established protocol, right? So, I mean, maybe they die in some really horrific way, and I don't know, does that make it better or worse?
I don't know.
No, you're right. It's pretty dark, and it doesn't seem like death ought to be that foreign to the others.
Right. I mean, if this is happening, 20, how many, 3 years, 36 months, 9 deaths. This is every 4 months that a pregnant woman is dying. And I'm sure, it's like, can they not handle that?
Yeah.
Anyway, hot take.
Oh, geez.
So this was a Jin and Sun episode.
Oh, man. So what this episode just made plain for me is that Jin and Sun's whole relationship, both before they got to the island, but also kind of on it, is a series of them making sacrifices for one another in order to keep them from experiencing some sort of pain. And in reality, just causing each other way more pain as a result, it seems. Like, they get married, Sun pays off Jin's mother so that Jin won't find out this shameful truth about his past. That results in Jin having to go work for Mr. Paik, which he does because he thinks he's trying to protect his marriage to Sun and prove that he's worthy of this, which, leads to Sun resenting him. And, like, it's just this whole series of, like, all these people, like, it's a horrible kind of one-upsmanship almost.
Yeah.
And it just made me really sad. Yeah, I don't have anything more profound than that. It's just something.
Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of cruel ironies in Jin and Sun stories, and you've identified several of them there. I mean, we see on Island as well this week the cruel irony of, if the baby is Jin's, she's going to die, and if she's going to live, the baby is not Jin's. And we see in the flashback this week that Jin's father is this, like, sweet, wonderful person who's so happy to meet Sun, and yet Jin, in order to, seemingly protect Sun and her father, has, pretended that he's dead, and Sun finally does find him and meets him, and it's wonderful, and yet she can never tell him.
Yeah, and Jin's father says, good, I'm glad he thinks that I'm dead, or he's been telling people that I'm dead. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
And it's, ugh.
I mean, it's...
Why can't we all just be happy?
I know. I mean, it's so interesting how, clearly it has to do with the culture that they're a part of and the status of Sun's father and, all of these, things that, like, can't really be changed or sort of out of their control. But it just, as a viewer, you just kind of want to, like, wring their necks sometimes and be like, no, you guys, this is okay. You can just, like, all be happy together.
Right, just talk to each other. Yeah, I mean, that said, Sun is certainly not, like, Sun does sort of, occasionally Sun has these moments where she reveals sort of what she's really made of and that she's pretty hardcore. And I think one of them is in this flashback where she says to her father, when she's trying to get him to give her the money, all my life I've pretended not to know what you do.
앞으로도 계속 그럴 거예요. 물론 아빠가 제 부탁을 들어주신다는 조건 아래. 이유는 묻지 마세요.
She basically blackmails her father.
Oh, yeah.
Into giving her the money. And, we get this cycle of blackmail that goes on here. And, of course, that leads to Jin having to do this horrible work for Mr. Pig. But,
I agree
tangled
with
webs.
That. Incredibly brave of Sun. I was thinking during that scene, like, what steel it must have taken to walk into this room with her, extremely powerful, intimidating father and go through with this actor. Yeah. And she knows it. She knows he's basically the mafia.
Yeah.
And she blackmails him. And she does it again, actually, with not someone quite as powerful, but at the end of the episode with Jin's mother, when she pays her off, she also basically threatens to have her killed if she comes back again.
She does. That's exactly what she does.
So Sun is, no, I agree, quite some real badass moments this episode.
Right. Despite how bad I sort of feel that this is her reality, I mean, she knows how to play within it.
She does. Not on the same level, but I also very much enjoyed when she's going to confront Juliet on the beginning, and Kate is following her and trying to stop her, and she's just like,
Wait, you don't have to do this. Go away, Kate.
Like, that is a real mood right there.
It is. It is.
Oh, boy. Jin, by the way, as well, in a different way, pretty badass this episode, running after Mikhail to stop him from getting away.
Taking
Not
down
once.
Mikhail is pretty great.
Yeah, and then doing it again at the end when he runs after him to get the radio. He 2 times bests Mikhail in the jungle. Good man, Jin. What I have a question for you. What did you think of Sun going to find Jin's father when this is clearly, like, against his wishes, and he's been trying to hide the fact of his parentage, and Sun sort of goes around him and does this? Like, is it okay that she does that? Or are we supposed to, like, is she being somehow disrespectful to his wishes by getting into his family? I don't know that I have a strong opinion about it. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't consider it disrespectful. I actually did spend a little time thinking about that, and I think what Sun might have been doing there is, in part, verifying this woman's story.
True.
The mother. We know that Sun is skeptical, and often rightly so, and she's not inclined to panic. And I think part of what she was doing there was like, okay, I have this information. Let's go see if I can get the rest of it. And kind of put these pieces together so that I understand what I'm dealing with. And, how seriously I need to take this threat, both to, this threat from the mother who's trying to blackmail them, but also she needs to understand Jin's reality in order to protect him and to protect it. Yeah, to know the truth in order to keep living the lie, if that makes sense.
In a sad, cruel way, it does.
Yeah. Which I mean is if we want to get into parallels, is a bit of a parallel to why she decides to get the ultrasound. Right? She needs to know the truth. And we don't know what she would have done if the baby had been
right, if it had been Jaylee conceived off island,
to the island. Yeah. But I wonder if that comes from the same place of, I'd rather know the truth and then I'll decide what to do from there.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think that's a really astute observation. And now that you've said it, I I would be stunned if she had found out that the answer was, conception off island and had actually told Jin that. She probably wouldn't have done it.
No, I think she would have come up with something. We don't know what.
Yeah.
But something else would have happened. But Sun is smart enough to figure that out, to think on her feet and to figure that out. But in order to figure that out, she needs to know what she's working with.
Yeah. To me, one of the saddest things this episode, and it's like, yeah, they both feel like they have a reason to keep doing this one-up thing that you described, but when Jin finds the money at the end of the flashback and Sun has this choice about what does she tell him, you so badly want her to just tell him the truth there, and hope that he can handle it, and what she tells him, that she had asked her father for the money to pay for, furniture and their honeymoon and nice things, like, for a second, I was afraid, like, oh shit, like, is this just as bad, though? Because this is something that's going to make him feel shame about his inability to provide. And I was just so overwhelmed by his response, which was beautiful, which was not to feel any shame at all, but to say, son, I understand why you feel this way, but don't worry about it. It's going to take a little longer, but we'll get there. I can do this. You and I can do this together. You should go give him the money back. It was just, it made me feel so sad that it's just a total lie that she's telling and that there's this whole other thing going on.
Yeah, and a lie that makes her seem kind of shallow and makes him seem like, powerless and not good enough. And yeah, but a lie to protect, I don't know.
Right, trying to protect his
secret.
His secret and his sense of shame, and it's just, ugh. I hate that they have to be in this position. It's also, I guess, kind of a reminder that Jin isn't the only one who, did some not great stuff in this relationship. We see that Sun, it's Sun's fault, sort of. Well, it's not really fault that he ends up having to do the stuff he does.
Yeah, I think we can argue that it probably would have ended up there anyway. But who knows? I think Sun's father is clearly a bad dude who dislikes Jin and, sort of wants to reject him out of hand because of his background. And I think he, not unlike Desmond, would have always had to prove himself to Charles Widmore. Like Jin would have always had to prove himself to Mr. Paik. And, this gave Mr. Paik a chance to, like, sink his hooks into Jin, but I think if it hadn't been this, it would have been something else.
That's a sad thought, but probably accurate.
Yeah.
So who's worse, Mr. Paik or Charles Widmore?
Has Charles Widmore had anybody killed that we know of?
I'm not sure directly that we know of, but it's a certainty.
That's true. Oh, dear.
Bad fathers.
A theme in Lost.
Yeah, oh boy.
So anyway.
Yeah. One other moment that made me very sad this episode was at the end when Juliet is about to go back into the Arrow to make her secret recording for Ben. She's tracking Sun and all that stuff. And Sun, before Juliet goes back in, says to Juliet, "You gave me good news," which is a reference back to Juliet making her speech about how so
she wants to give. This used to be the best part of her job, and she wants to give good news again.
Right, and after telling all the women she's going to die, and so the fact that Sun goes out of her way to explicitly say that in order to make Juliet feel good when really Juliet has sort of delivered bad news, and to tell her, no, you delivered good news. And knowing that
you still told me I'm going to die, but
right, but she wants Juliet to be okay with it,
right?
And the fact that she tells her that, which is so kind, as Juliet is sneaking back into the station to secretly betray her, it's totally heartbreaking.
Yes, it is heartbreaking, but I did believe Juliet when she said, "I want to give good news again."
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That seemed extremely sincere. And we know, after she makes the recording, she turns off the recorder and she just says, "I hate you." And it's clear that it's becoming very clear that she does not feel loyal to Ben. She doesn't want to be doing this. She's just
Sure.
feels like she has to.
And
So,
yet she is doing it.
True.
Anyway, I know that she's gonna, like in a week or two, fill Jack in on what's happening and help them out. But at the moment, I continue to be somewhat frustrated.
Yeah.
Anyway, what else is on your mind this episode?
Oh gosh. So if we can transition over to our other party,
The Naomi
that
party.
being, yes. Apparently, it's a pretty long established thing that people just heal shockingly fast on the island. Mikhail says she'll probably be better in a day or a day and a half, and she's had like a collapsed lung and some really horrific injuries. And I guess that makes Ben's cancer even more of an anomaly.
Right. By the way, this is a very random thought here, but we haven't brought this up before. I was always sort of under the impression, or at least like gave myself the idea, that the reason people don't get cancer generally on the island is because of like the shit tons of radiation that are just everywhere.
Wouldn't that make you more likely? I guess. Okay, never mind. Yeah.
I don't know. The kind of radiation that kills cancer, not the kind that causes it.
Right. Not all of the other types.
Yeah. I don't know. That might be wrong, but that was always my sort of assumption after we learned about the electromagnetism. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Anyway.
Oh gosh. So, yeah, and of course, Mikhail's whole involvement in this whole thing is something else. A fun fact I learned on Lostpedia is when Naomi is murmuring and Mikhail's helping her, and she said, "Thank you for helping me." She actually says, "I am not alone."
Yeah.
And it's not subtitled, and Mikhail decides to keep that information to himself.
Should we do our hindsights?
You go first.
Okay. Well, my hindsight is actually about the cliffhanger, so we'll circle back to that. I just think that the ultimate explanation for what is happening, why Naomi says that's impossible, you're all dead, they found the plane, this idea that Widmore, faked the plane crash to stop anyone else from searching for the island. Pretty good explanation as these things go. Like, it's never going to be as satisfying as the incredible, crazy mystery moment of, oh, fuck, how is that possible? What did she just say? Because nothing is. But as these things go, like, I was very satisfied by that one and how they unspooled that over time.
Mine is exactly the same.
That was your hindsight, too?
It was. Yeah, just that this super pays off. And, like, the timing of it is so good. Like, it gives us this wonderful, shocking explanation that takes a while to pay off. And when it does, it's in the service of building up Charles Widmore as the big bad. And
yeah,
I just think it's really good. And it's satisfying. It shows how evil he is and that he went and, like, dug up a bunch of graves and put these bodies on this plane and in order to protect this place.
It's a very cool explanation. And I'm glad that we had the same hindsight.
I thought yours are usually more well considered than mine, and mine are usually just like, oh yeah, this is coming up, I'm excited for that. So I expected you to come out with something of like,
well, excuse me, I think this
in, like,
was very
season
well
6,
considered.
episode 13 when this happens, and
yeah.
No.
Oh boy. Okay, so we have interview. We have more from Andrew Divoff.
Yes, if you have just joined us recently and missed our first few sessions with Andrew Divoff, Sammy sat down with him at like a horror film and fan convention over the summer, and they had a great conversation about his history as an actor, his approach to the character of Mikhail, his thoughts about the historical Bakunin and the role those names play, and he's just the best, and this will be our final session.
Had you seen the show before you got cast on?
I had. I'd watched a couple of episodes, and my impatience, got to me, and so I stopped. I got a little pissed off. I didn't understand, what was going on. And it wasn't until it was clear to me, and I think maybe that was a little bit of the reason for me saying, no, man, Don't want to go in. Don't want to read for it. Not interested.
Interesting.
And finally, and I believe it was 6 times. Finally, on the 6th time, I said, "Okay, I'll go in." My agent said to me, "Andrew, this you have to read this character. It's a wonderful character." I'm just so I did read it, and I saw it, and it was honestly it was that moment what told me about this character. That moment where he realizes what he's done will kill him. Means his demise, and he goes through with it anyway. I thought, holy shit! I hadn't seen a whole lot of characters. I played characters that had their code, if you will, and stuck to it. Luis Cali from Toy Soldiers, and even Cherry Gantz from Another 48 Hours. But this character, the depth of this guy, and his honor, whether you liked what he did or not, was just. Wow, it just rang true to me, and it's something that I respected as Andrew.
Did you keep watching it all after you left the show?
I did.
So,
And again, I was trying to follow and thinking again to what I had said about my sort of my feeling about what was the show about, and going back to avatars, demigods and avatars. And I just kind of I was frustrated. Not understand. Okay, the others, and why are these others? Why stupid? Sounds stupid, naive. Why can't they get along? Why don't they?
No, it's not a stupid question.
I mean, it just and so I was always frustrated. And then I dropped out for a little bit, and again, probably not necessarily feeling slighted, but sort of unrequited love, if you will, after you sort of you're let go, and it's tough because you do form a family, you really do, and it's intimate, and even just passing each other every day and saying hi, though you may not work with that particular actor, there was that intimacy, and then there's that thing of being unloved. Tossed aside, sort of.
Well, they did bring you back the one time at the end, right? And you got to be a translator, as I recall, at the end. Did you watch the finale of the show?
I did.
I ask everyone we interview, what did you think of the finale?
I watched it once, and it was to me at that time it was. And I've shared this with fans. It was what we feared it might be. Was a convenient sort of a closure, a convenient a conclusion, because other things needed attention and not this anymore. And I'll never forget one fan said to me. He said, you need to watch it 2 or 3 times. He said, I felt that way, but I watched it again and again and again, and then it started to make sense. I mean, when I saw that big gear in the mountainside, I'm thinking, how the fuck? I mean, how unorganic that was. Seeing that gear and trying to figure out what the fuck, and thinking, what are these people all just after all in a fucking Rolex watch?
Which gear? Oh, you're talking about that plug in the heart of the island thing going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just kind of I sort of, I guess, I spurned it, but I will watch it again. Yeah. I'll watch the ending again. But I did, it's the fear of every show that ends, and that when the fans also feel it's going to end, is that, oh my God, I hope at least we get a closure. Everything is explained.
Yeah.
Well, that's not ever really going to happen, is it? I mean, yeah. Let me ask you, Sammy.
Sure.
What did you think?
Ooh, well, I did have some level of disappointment about questions not being answered. I think that I had come to accept by the time it aired that that just wasn't going to be the case. I sort of realized that last season the direction the show was going was toward more of a spiritual conclusion than a mystery conclusion. So I was very satisfied by it. I loved those characters. I thought, it was extremely touching to see them, get to be together in the end. And I mean, I guess I'm not an especially religious or spiritual person, but there was something it's not like I watched that and I thought, this is what it's really going to be like. But there was something touching about the idea that, that all of the crazy stuff that happened to them and they did wasn't totally meaningless. Like in a way that I couldn't have, identified that through religion or through a traditional spiritual setting. Through this TV show I loved, I was able to find meaning in this kind of, afterlife finding each other type concept. So I enjoyed it for that reason.
Well, then I would have to say that you are, to me, very obviously a spiritual person.
Well,
yeah. But I don't mean that as a confine of saying. I just mean that you allow your spirit and you are affected by things and are thoughtful about them.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So, Rosie, what do you think? Is he right? Am I a spiritual person?
I've known you to be more of a man of science than a man of faith, but I think anyone who can get this deeply into a show with as much of a metaphysical undercurrent as Lost is, must have some sort of an inclination towards something.
Well,
towards the universe.
It's coming from you, more of the person of faith in the podcast partnership that we have. I'll take that as a compliment. Not that you are not also scientific in ways, but
anyway.
No, anyway.
Thank you so much to Andrew Divoff for sitting down with us, specifically for sitting down with Sammy. It was a great pleasure to listen to. As promised, next week we will return to Nestor Carbonell, who played Richard Alpert, who of course is going to return to a prominent role next week when we watch The Brig.
Yeah, we had one segment from Nestor earlier this season. If you go back and listen, I believe it was not in Portland.
It was.
In the Juliet flashback, where we played our first part of the interview with Nestor, and we'll the next couple of weeks be continuing and closing out the season with him here, and it's which we're very excited to share.
As mentioned, next week we've got episode 19, The Brig. It's a great one. John Locke and Sawyer team up to, team up might be an overstatement, but anyway, we'll get into that next week.
As always, you can find us on social media. Follow us on Twitter at The Hatch Podcast, Facebook.com as well / The Hatch Podcast.
Again, if you'd like to leave us a hot take, we'd welcome it. 9546 Dharma.
And rate and review. Go into your podcast app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. Give us a couple of stars and let us know what you think of the show.
Our theme music is by Andy G. Cohen, and our cover art is by Danny Roth.
And we will be back next week.
Namaste.